Okay, back to Zoom life. D.A. Powell is a poet and educator. He's received a Paul Engel Fellowship from the James Michener Center, a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Lyric Poetry Award from the Poetry Society of America, among many other accolades. His books include Chronic, Useless Landscape, or A Guide for Boys, and Repast, Tea, Lunch, Cocktails. He's taught at a number of universities, including Columbia and the University of Iowa. He's served as the Briggs Copeland Lecturer in Poetry at Harvard University and currently teaches at the University of San Francisco. Yeah, please welcome one of our favorites, D.A. Powell. Maw Shein Win is a poet, editor, and educator who lives and teaches in the Bay Area. Her poetry chapbooks are Ruins of a Glittering Palace and Score and Bone. Invisible Gifts, Poems was published by Manic D Press in 2018. She was a 2019 visiting scholar in the Department of English at UC Berkeley. Win is the first poet laureate of El Cerrito, California from 2016 to 2018. She often collaborates with visual artists, musicians, and other writers. Her new full-length collection, Storage Unit for the Spirit House, you can see right behind Maw, is the reason we are here this evening. So please join me in welcoming Maw Shein Win.
Yay. Thank you. Thanks so much, Car and Green Apple Books for hosting us. And I'm so honored to be reading with Doug. Thank you, Doug. And I'd like to thank Omnidon for publishing my book, and to everyone for joining us during this intense week. So I'd like to say a little bit about how Storage Unit for the Spirit House came to be. It began as a group of poems I had been working on around the idea of containers and containment. Some questions I considered: what do we save and what do we discard? What is hidden and what is released? Who is held and who is not? I had been working initially on poems sparked by a curiosity about storage units, and then continued to explore the theme of containment by writing pieces about theaters, parlors, dens, and other forms of architecture, whether physical or emotional. The Nats I refer to, spelled N-A-T-S, are animist deities, which some Buddhists believe can play tricks or even wreak havoc on one's life if the Nat spirits are not appeased. Hence, enter the Spirit House. Spirit House 4. Sibling follows sibling into thorn forest. Girl holds stick of incense, tip aglow. 37 gnats await atop Mount Popa. Volcanic relics, sister brother, blue-throated barbets. Lightning clue, nest lands on soft earth, entwined vines, distant blaze. Candlewick floating in bowl of oil. Storage Unit 202. The rental faces another house. When she arrives, there are wild turkeys in the street. It begins to rain. The storage unit in El Cerrito holds pinned moths in cases, brass castanets, tin pants, a box of cork buttons. She swims laps in the thunderstorm. Storage Unit 202. 1. Secondhand gloves. 2. A king drinking pear juice trapped in a glass jar. 3. Wet hair and wet fur. 4. Velvet spurs. 5. Directions to the other world. And this is my last Spirit House poem in the book, Spirit House 6. The gnats had moved into the house on Inya Lake, zoomed through halls with pocket knives, tamarind seeds, green bananas. Family offerings of jade bracelets, cheroot cigars, deer tails. The medium danced wildly in the living room, drunk on palm wine, spinning, spinning. Orchestra of circle drums and copper bells played on the staircase, natpwe. 8 children on the floorboards, leaping over uncles and cousins, shaking, shaking. Mother lit candles on the wall shrine. She spoke to the blue-winged insects. They whispered back. A gnat warmed itself by the flame. Auntie walked in a dream state, hot room. Cousin slowly opened a large trunk of teak and silver strips. The gnats flew inside, one after the other, after the other. Theater in 3 acts. Where are the minnows? Song of gongs in Mini Mall. What happens to the body after soliloquy? Mine in mottled fur coat. When does the future arrive? Birthmark on forehead in shape of flame. Cinema. The auteur pops pain pills. Hybrid, saga, biopic. Adrift in the headroom. Gnat escape. Sirens, deep background. Close-up of beehive in a cemetery. Fugue state, reverse shot, tomb fur. Montage of lace handcuffs and cardboard boots. Choking ocean. This is called Diorama. Where will the deer sleep? I thought about this last night, as I always do. Why do we hope? Hope and beauty are obsolete constructs, they concurred. How does a painting speak? Language is the difference among 3 things. Who enters the spectacle? The brave ones with their silk skirts. The dining room table was set for 6, 1 missing spoon. My neighbor captures escaped bees with a butterfly net. Forest burns a violent red. Deer leap from the flames' singed flanks. Hold on now to what's left. MRI scan. Band marches through crowd. Chimes, gongs, a sound bridge, vibration of metal coils. There were drummers and wailing, promise of salvation, malediction but no misfortune. There were seekers and preachers. Panic button, bang bang, last sensation. And this is called the soft part of the brain. We ride our wooden bicycles along the dust path. Blooms above weep drops of sap on arms and legs. Children on electric scooters zip across freeways. Bring your toothbrush, memorize the cue cards. The soft part of the brain fits into a clear jar. glazed wheels, roads taken, minty pillows. And here's another Spirit House poem, Spirit House 2. My next door prison neighbor. We can't see ourselves. Garland of posies slung through iron bars. Gnat swinging from old rope. Can sense us holding our cups, cocks, crosses. Teardrop tattoo on cheek. Eyelash on pillow. We touch ourselves. And this next poem was inspired by Un Chant d'Amour, a film by Jean Genet in 1950, made in 1950. And the title of the poem is a line from the novel Querelle de Bresse by Jean Genet. And this is the title. When the gallery convicts clanked out of the prison in their chains. Fainted, panted, close up. Scar, scallop, heft of flesh. Gold flecked space between. Two heads, light bulbs on wire, matched action. Roses, eyes, leather, belt light popped, corks on floor. Smoke through rain. Dirt on bare heels, birdcage, flute, snapdragon, tattoo dance. Such delicate nerves. Containers. What about the spitting cobra? Why do I repeat myself? Does self-storage matter? Are your teeth still here? Who do you hold? Is this a panic attack? When do the hummingbirds arrive? Where does guilt come from? Do you see the calathea? What disturbs me? I witness each body through the missing bricks. And now I'd like to share some poems, a few poems written during shelter in place. And this is called Wetlands. Otter and mink roam the fen. I don a vest of moss. Cormorants and curlew sound from the bog. I avoid the beehive. Sea trout and croaker move through saltwater swamp. I consult my mood ring. How will I feel? Sedges and saltbush. The bobcats are disappearing. I cry at all the right times. Snake. Pain coiled below the scalp. Spine curled in ball on calfskin sofa. THC bath salts from town. Snake ascends from curving spine. Grass gathers along forearms. Foam brace holds neck up straight. Snake in a patch near the crown. Curving road ahead veers in the dark. Musculoskeletal x-rays flash in brain. Rip of pain zips from hip. Ginger and turmeric roots grow under hair. Rhizome shoots appear on shoulder blades. And this poem is for Tom, and it's called Winter Hair. I hear the songbirds more these days. try to decipher sirens and calls. Tea makes a cocktail for us called Black Lily. I grow out my white roots, winter hair. Our calico wails at 3 a.m. My mother's losing her hearing. Figs fall from nearby trees. Wild bobcat roams yards of shuttered homes. I read somewhere that blue jays molt. Unkempt, they fly away. And this is my second to last poem, Spirit House 5. As a child, I did not climb trees. Instead, I gathered leaves that flew to the ground. The elms were tall in the fall, the neighbor boys cruel. One left a dead kitten in a box on the doorstep. I made homes among the leaves, safety in gold, yellow, brown. Invented a family who lived in a treehouse. Green twig, the mother, broken branch, the father, 2 ferns, the missing sisters. Thank you. And now I'd like to end with a poem by Danez Smith, and it's called Little Prayer. Let ruin end here. Let him find honey where there was once a slaughter. Let him enter the lion's cage and find a field of lilacs. Let this be the healing, and if not, let it be. Thank you for listening.
Maw, that was beautiful. This is the second time that we've gotten to read together in the past couple of months. And I'm such a fan of this book and the new poems too. Just wonderful. I have behind, I'm gonna change the lighting in here a little bit. No, maybe not. Too dark. I have behind me a calendar that says January 2021, and I'm so happy that that's where we're at, because it represents an end and a beginning. The Roman god Janus has 2 faces, one looking back and one looking forward. And I think that the face looking back is the ugly face of Donald Trump, and the face looking forward is the face of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all of us who have worked so hard for change. We've needed it. Also, Ma, I love that you ended by reading a poem by somebody else and left that door open, because I wanted to begin by reading a poem by somebody else. This is a poem by Susie F. Garcia. Susie was in a workshop of mine at Tin House Writers Conference, maybe 10 years ago. And you know, what I think students sometimes forget is that, you know, the time that it takes to put together a collection is the time that it takes. Life does things and you're busy, and, you know, when it happens, it happens. This book is called A Homegrown Fairy Tale, and it is organized around a story that I think resonates for a lot of us here in the Bay Area. It's called The Wizard of Oz. And this poem is entitled A Dream, a Gale. I was the middle where the southern and northern winds met, where the house still stood, an inexact center. We were torn apart at the last moment, darling, and our joints unhinged. The wind was a violence that whipped my hair, and when we settled, we did not get all the right parts. My hand has never moved like the water again. A freckle on your nose I had not seen before. This was not a condemnation. I feel blessed. In Oz, we prism, blur borders, become stateless. Dorothy, you are the last of the miracles. Ochre runs through your veins. Breathe out, gilded air. I started for California, made a stop at the first place there was water. I received word that there was no gold left in Hollywood, not for me, not for you. Dorothy, it doesn't matter. We can go full burlesque if you want. A show in Vegas every night until you're ready to return to Oz. There are lights on the strip too, Dorothy. This is put out by Own Bouquet in Chicago, Illinois. That's bonebouquet.org. Little plug for Susie's chapbook. And I'm going to start by reading some poems from a chapbook of my own. This is entitled Atlas Tea. It was published by Rescue Press. You can buy copies of the book directly through Rescue Press. I normally am not like, hey, buy my books, but this was done in a limited edition, and all of the proceeds, like 100% of the cost of, it's $18. Those $18 all go to benefit Youth Speaks, an organization here in the Bay Area, which also is now nationwide, working with young people to give them a voice through poetry. And what I love about this book is it has a belly band. So you have to decide whether you're gonna break it open or just kind of slide off the ocean, kind of like you're sliding off somebody's panties, your own maybe. And then you have an ocean you can take with you. You can wear it as a hat. The collection is organized in sort of a strange way. That is to say, I wrote the poems with a few specific goals in mind. I wanted it to be sort of a murder mystery, sort of a game, and to involve 6 characters. So all of the lines, each poem is 6 lines long, but they're long lines. And it's sort of an homage to a movie that Stephen Sondheim and psycho actor Anthony Perkins wrote when they were lovers in the late 60s, early 70s. They loved playing games, doing crossword puzzles, and they wrote a movie called The Last of Sheila, which is all about a murder mystery game that goes horribly wrong. And, if that doesn't feel like your life, good for you. But I always feel like I am somewhere in the middle of a murder mystery game and trying to figure out who did it. So I wrote the poems and then would go through the DVD version of The Last of Sheila and take the DVD titles and then just stick them on the poems. So I didn't know what title was coming next. I blinded that to myself. So sometimes the titles have sort of strange relations to the poems. This is called A Body Discovered. Until love seals me in a bag inside a heavy morgue drawer and tags me, I am anyone's paramour. Butterfly among the marigolds. In the impossible summer city, I find your dumb boy bottom hanging out your dungarees, catching frisbee or something. It looks like you've got a little son. I don't care how much you don't love me. I am thy inconstant sparrow. Until you hear the loose seed of milk vetch rattle in the pod. That's how blue the long sky. There is yet no hawk's eye waiting. But the great monster will come to take me someday. When it tears me, don't look. When it tears me with its hard hooks, don't look. Do not resuscitate. I know the fog lets loose in wisps. They are the shape of moss on live oak limbs. I'll tell you when to code. This is called Puzzle Pieces. Don't worry, the titles don't have to make sense. Although they kind of do. Because, you know, anything can be a piece of a puzzle. They haven't invented a morning after pill that actually gets rid of the morning after. As long as we're talking about where I've been. Down to the Easy Stop market to grab some buds. That's when I ran into Hot Check Hannah, who wrote, you guessed it, a hot check, and got me some smokes. Somehow I still had $5 when I got to the bar. I wish I'd had it when I left. I could have used $5. I'm not even going to tell you what it was like to fuck in Eddie's trailer, or Eddie's friend's trailer. Different Eddie, different trailer. God knows where he is now. Once we were close enough to give each other lice. The future is the present we leave for others. Besides the complications, there were bodies, the wonder of bodies, the misery of bodies. O time, you done robbed me blind. Unofficial confessions. I shared a rig with a cowboy at the junkyard. We sat on a freezer door. He was a jagged can and I got ripped. Some creatures grow in darkness. Some flowers bloom at night. I am willing to be inappropriate, but not when it's light. Across the way, a man held Jupiter and his 12 moons up in a single glass. One was a boy moon. Oh, that astronomy. I stood by the throne and gave that thirsty man my cup. He lifted it with one hand and tied off with the other. Later, he come at me with a knife. I had to keep my sharp eye out. I did not sleep. They asked me, why didn't you leave? Why didn't I leave? In a word, his horse was the last horse in town. He put me up. Unclean exit. They told me I must learn to kill my darlings, so I started with you. Release the body in spring like it's on sale. I see you in all things. Porn poodles, they are a separate breed, and anything else that is urban. The cinched bark of a tree, the restrictions on zoning. Once they tighten the belt, they ain't gonna loosen it unless. The old red hot poker up the bum. I refer, of course, to Edward II, who should have dumped his darling Gaveston. Planning, that's an urban thing. Dress in layers, peel throughout the day. Reflective panes so we can look past one another. In the midst of the city, we plant trees. They are chosen both to hide and to withstand men's urine, and of course, disease. And this is called End Credits. End credits because actually that was the last chapter of the movie, surprise. And over the end credits of the movie, since it is, Anthony Perkins and Stephen Sondheim making their queer love poem to each other through the veil of this murder mystery. There's a Bette Midler song that plays over the end credits called Friends. You all know that song, but you didn't know that it was from a movie called The Last of Sheila. So this is end credits, Friends. I thought you'd called me here to solve a murder, he said over tea. Or commit one, sip. He took a 3 Mississippi sip. True, we had used Union Square as our office. We'd meet every day at the same cafe. He was my Mr. Jones when I'd get my Jones Jones. Now he's just bones, if that. But I called him back to the scene of past crimes. Look at our language, he says. It's gotten so stark. Who ya tellin', I says. There's nobody here. Queer. He called me queer, then spanked me into a cab to his pad where we got down to aperitifs. Wait, is this the past? No, I says, it's your present. One more for bold time's sake. Me and Stewie, we'd rendezvous, we would screw over drinks on the brink of disaster. We'd get plastered. What became of that bastard? Much and too much and too soon. And Ma, just like you, I'm going to give the 2 minute, the 2 poem warning here. I'm going to read 2 newer poems. I mean, newer than older poems, I guess. The first is called, these are fire and water, and I'm going to start with the water poem. It's called The River Song, and it's about rivers, which I love and seem to always find so compelling in literature. The River Song. In space, there are no rivers as we know them here, blue planet of melted and melting ice. Rivers that somniloquy at night along the earth-packed levees, long-lost lasses crying for their done-gone man, or other more practical reasons. Rivers that gargle under wooden bridges built like George Washington's teeth, close together and unsmiling. Rivers as Langston knew them, birth waters, cradles, crescents of creation. Or as in Ovid, transformation, laurel-ringed and cypress-filtered silt of reclamation. Upon thy banks I wept the night you went down river in my dreams and disappeared to the waking world. Rivers that make borders and lines between states, solid and liquid lines, the spaces in between where we cross, our bodies stroking against the flow. I took you under in the moonlight, and we were gone in the surge and spurt, the little trickle at the end. My life rivers, tentacled and wrapped around a sailor's arm, rope burned, tattooed, covering up names we'd rather lose. Rivers feeding catfish along the bottom, bass and crappies and arachnine crays, lucid dreams of ancient laws come down from the mountains, swift and sympathetic lightning striking trout and brilliant minnow shattering, dispersing earth with each tendril, rivers, none of which are on Venus, or the wizened moon we couple under along these unsettled mosaic shores. Where will we swim tonight, following the light down from its source to the gaping mouth littered with stars? And then the fire poem is, when this lockdown all started, boredom quickly gave way to a kind of subliminal violence that I think is just, bubbling forth in the culture in all sorts of unhealthy ways. Have you noticed, for example, that everyone's driving like they're in Mad Max? I mean, what the fuck, They just come whipping around the corner. Nobody cares what they hit anymore. And around June, the fireworks started. Every night, people setting off illegal fireworks. Building up to July 4th, but then after the 4th of July, they continued. And I was just getting so anxious. One day I was in the bath and I heard, it was probably a car alarm, but it sounded like a fire alarm. And all of these memories of fires that my grandfather died in, that my father set for insurance purposes, that I escaped in college, all of these fires kept flooding back, flooding fires. Anyway, I'm mixing my metaphors. But I got out of the bath and I wrote this poem. And I'm sorry, there's no punctuation in the poem except for the ends of lines and the ends of stanzas. So, I wrote it as if the paper itself were on fire. It's called Elegy on Fire. I escaped from a building on fire with only my jeans pulled on and not even shoes on my feet. As I stood there thinking of that Peggy Lee song, Is That All There Is? A stranger put a blanket on me. I wasn't on fire and didn't need to be put out, but it was clear I needed comfort of some sort, and a human in the vicinity gave it. This is a 4th of July tale, the hazards of smoldering ordnance in the dumpster next to the kitchen window, the careless, casual way we toss live ammo in the air, and golly gee, ain't that a shimmerer, ain't that a beaut, my father would say, who grew up in the land of fireworks and taught me before I could walk and talk, the way to light a fuse is hold it with your fingernails. So if it burns fast, it might burn you, but it won't explode. And always immerse the shells in water after, just in case. He who loved bombs went to Nam, collected guns. I always thought, like, poets come out with collected poems. My father should come out with collected guns. But now he's buried in Saipan, though I think he'd appreciate the way my humor bombs sometimes. A weeping willow, he said, looking up at the sky while the bombs were bursting in air. What would he make of this display of affection years after we ran out of things to say? And what would he make of this country he served and questioned at the same time? The way we love and don't love our parents, who are, after all, just grown kids, a little smarter than us perhaps, but not by much, especially when they vote. I want to wake up the neighbors the way they once woke me. The building's on fire. Get out, get out. I want to have already rebuilt after patriotism has hurled its sparklers in the trash and scorched us all. On my way home on base, I'd hear retreat on the public address and stand at attention as it played out over the Quonset huts and fences, over the bombers that sat on alert, and the supersonic reconnaissance craft, and the boys playing stickball. Unexploded ordnance left over from a previous war. The tripwires cross the fields like spider silk, but finer. I put my hand over my heart. I put my heart over my head. I loved in the midst of war, the war's music. The Iliad lay open on my bunk, open to the body of Hector on his shield. I was a boy. It was an island. It was far from home, but it was quarters and soldiers, beaches of white sand, and boy, the fireworks, they broke into 1,000 threads cascading over the fields of Troy. But then I woke in a city on fire, and when I went to carry my father out, he was already on a pyre. He lit himself. It's a wonder the rest of us got out.
Wonderful, Doug.
Yeah.
Wonderful to read with you, Ma. I feel like
wonderful to read with you.
now we're supposed to like go around the corner to the Irish bar and
Oh, I
have a
wish.
drink. Yeah.
That was lovely. Thank you.
Wonderful. Are we taking questions? Are we conversing? Are we doing anything?
There's a question. What is the poet's role in our diminishing democracy? Do you want to answer that, Doug? And I could say something.
What is the poet's role in our diminishing? Oh my God, I don't know. You know, I feel like poets are really sort of the supernumeraries of the opera of life. You know, we're not the stars, we're not the mezzos, we're not the tenors. We're the people who sort of carry the swords over the side, but constantly take notes. We're the ones who are secretly writing the librettos for the next. I'm working in an extended metaphor that's even sort of crazy and pretentious because, you know, most of us don't even get opera. I don't get opera. But the point is, you know, whatever the grand design is of the world, poetry is always sort of at the periphery, at the margins, and we're taking notes and we're, you know, we're working in a form that, thank God, a lot of people don't really pay attention to. So we get to get away with stuff. We get to fuck in Eddie's trailer and Eddie's friend's trailer.
Sometimes I make a joke with my friends that the poets, like, you know, you have the musicians and the opera singers up here, and then you have the, you know, what would be under the musicians, and you know, the visual artists. Anyways, I'm kind of joking, but then you kind of move down the bottom of the tree, and then there are the poets. And I love what you said, that we're taking notes. And I think to continue to create during this time of our diminishing democracy is so important. And Cara, I love what you said at the beginning, that, you know, we need poetry and all the arts during this time. I feel like, you know, during lockdown, I mean, I'm a film person. I've never seen so many films in my life. And it's just been so, helpful to have the arts as a refuge.
Right. And we think of, Sappho, despite all of the ways in which poets get erased or forgotten, there are still words, phrases, bits of poetry that outlast us and our work. And we don't know what that will be, but we know that, people quote Shakespeare all the time without ever having read him, because his words have passed into the language. People quote Langston Hughes all the time without necessarily having read the poems that they're quoting from. Gertrude Stein.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like poetry is a little bit like, writing a message, sticking it in a bottle. The bottle floats out someplace, it breaks, the message gets waterlogged, half of it's illegible, but there's still a little something that's enough that somebody will pick it up and say, wow, I never heard somebody put it like this before.
Oh, beautiful, Doug. I love that. So Doug, I had a question for you. How has it been for you during, shelter in place writing and just, doing your work?
Yeah. Well, I feel like shelter in place is sort of like, a vacation in some ways. But when it becomes longer than a vacation, then it feels a little bit like prison. But, you just have to make of it what you can. I find that I'm having a lot of conversations with people. Zoom, thank God, has sort of, made it easy for. In fact, this is wonderful because, sometimes you give a reading at Green Apple, and there's the dozen people who live in the neighborhood who'll come, and a few people will trek over from the East Bay. But in this format, we get to have friends join us from all over. It doesn't matter where everyone is.
Yeah, that's true. I feel in a way we're fortunate in that we're writers because we can still, do readings and share. And I think my husband, Tom, is a drummer, and I know it's been hard for musicians during this time and performers to, express themselves. And for myself, I don't know, I guess I've gone up and down as far as my writing practice over these months. But one thing I'm working on right now that I've been kind of excited about, I've been working on a series of poems called Thought Logs. And, last summer I started writing them, and I was in a workshop. And in the workshop, we were supposed to write down, it's almost like free writing, but it was a little more kind of structured to write down our thoughts, one on each line. And I just started doing it every day, and it just became such a, I don't know, like I started to rely on it every morning. And so I've been working on those, and now I'm doing dream logs, and I am kind of obsessed with the captain's logs now. So I've been thinking of all different types of logs, and so I've been writing during this time.
Have you done one for Starfleet?
Well, that was my next thing. I was gonna. I looked up the captain's logs. I Googled it. And I was like, I gotta find out all these logs that they wrote. Yeah.
And do you and Tom do any kind of collaboration? Do you ever?
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I like to collaborate with musicians, and I have two music duos. And so I've been trying to convince Tom, he's listening in the other room, that we could do a duo together. And he's like, well, my drum set is in Oakland. And I'm just like, honey, you can play your pots and pans, our pots and pans. And unfortunately, I can't sing, but I thought I could do some kind of vocalizing at the same time. So let's see what'll happen. But we have been invited to do a performance together. So we have something to work towards.
You better send me that link. I want to.
Definitely. Well, I had another question for you, Doug.
Okay.
So I wanted to know, unless Car, did you have a question? Oh, okay. So when you're writing, do you have a certain ritual that you do for yourself? Like, do you have to be sitting in a certain place and be drinking a certain something? And I'm always curious about rituals.
I would have to say no. And I think it's because, when I started writing seriously, I was going to school, I was working a minimum of 1 or 2, sometimes 3 jobs. So I felt like if I'm ever going to get anywhere in writing, I have to be really portable and just be able to, sometimes I've got 20 minutes where I'm waiting for a bus and I'm like, 20 minutes, I'm going to pull out my notebook and jot some things down. William Carlos Williams, used to keep a piece of paper in his typewriter in his office, and in between patients, he'd type down a few ideas. And I just feel like the great gift of poetry is that it really is portable. You can carry it in here. You can carry it in here.
Right.
You can slip it into any pocket. You can tuck it inside a book. I apparently wrote the beginnings of a poem inside my copy of Frankenstein. I was just in the middle of reading Frankenstein. Oh, here are a few ideas. Just jotted it right down there next to Mary Shelley. I thought she'd get a kick out.
Wonderful.
What about you? Do you have rituals?
I like to listen to music, instrumental or ambient music. And I have to be sitting on pillows, have a pillow behind my back. I am a note taker. And I'm on Zoom all the time. So I usually have a notebook right next to my laptop, and I'm, taking copious poetic notes throughout the day. And I find that really helpful later, to look through my notes and come up with ideas for poems. So yeah, I guess my ritual would be, to, like you, just have a notebook or something handy, and take notes. And yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking, when I was reading your book, when you first sent me the manuscript, I thought, here's someone who really has sort of a collector's mind, that everything in your poems feels like it was chosen and placed there with great care. And I love those kinds of poems, the kinds of poems where you feel like every line has something magical and discoverable.
Thank you, Doug. And I am a collector of objects.
What's your favorite
minimalist?
What's your favorite kind of object to collect?
Oh my gosh. Well, I collect art. So I have art we have art all over our place. And books, and paper.
I love paper. I love paper so much. I have a big, sliding shelf unit, and I just have, I'll take paper off of the gift that somebody gave me, and I'll salvage a little square of it and then I tuck it into a card or a letter that I'm sending someone.
I know, I get a piece of paper and I'm like, I might want this piece of paper in 3 years. I'll save it. So I do have paper from many years ago. And in fact, I'm right now at my desk in our shared office, but I had stacks of paper covering the desk. And so basically I had to move everything and now it's on our bed. And to make space to just look like my desk is all neat and organized.
I love when people send me poems. Sheila Murphy sent me this beautiful broadside that she did. And it's just like, you know, I have folders and folders of broadsides and I'll just bring them out and, you know, I put some up on my office door, of course, at school and inside my office. And I tuck them inside gifts to friends.
Well, Doug, I have something for you when we can all see each other safely again. I have a broadside project that I did with my friend Megan Wilson, but the broadsides are pretty big. They're, I don't know, about 3 feet by 2 feet. So, Car, if you want one too, we have them in our storage unit.
Let's plan a broadside party for, you know, when things are open and safe again, and invite a bunch of poets and have everyone come and read from a broadside, and then we can like throw them in a pot and sort of, you know, like everybody takes somebody else's broadside.
Oh, I love that. Okay, we're gonna do it.
Can Green Apple sponsor?
We're totally 100%. Well, thank you to my fellow paper collectors. What a really special evening. I'm so glad that, what a great way to start the new year. It's our first event of the year at Green Apple, and it couldn't have been better. It's such a pleasure hearing you both read. Ma, congratulations on your latest collection. And Tom, if you can hear us, we're holding out on that collaboration. And Doug, I'm so excited to read Atlas T now, Rescue Press.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you, Car. And I should have mentioned also that Green Apple Books has books of mine there as well.
Yes. But you know, okay to go directly to a press as long as you don't go to that other outlet in which we won't name.
Since the pandemic, I have put myself on an Amazon diet, and it's amazing how you can get other, you know, like there was a movie that my mother wanted to watch, and I'm going to watch it with her, but, you know, in separate locations. So I found it on Amazon, and then I was like, okay, where else can I find it? And I ended up finding, you know, like a little rare movie dealer on eBay and got it from them instead. And so, you know, like, so far, I have only made like one Amazon purchase since March.
Great.
And I think if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Agreed.
And buy from the bookstores, Green Apple.
It helps us out a lot. What a pleasure. Thank you both for joining us. Thank you all out there for joining us as well. It was really nice to see some familiar names and some new names, and it just felt like we were together. It was such a treat. So thank you both. Thank you all for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Car.
Thank you, Natalie, Lillian, and Rosa.
Thank you, Ma, for
you,
inviting me. This was wonderful.
It was wonderful. Yay. We'll talk soon.
Yes.
All right.
Good night, folks.
Bye.